You need to be careful. It's dangerous out here.
I'm going to say it. I think I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'm going to say the thing that you say. Are you ready? Here it goes. Another New Vegas retrospective almost makes you wish for a nuclear winter.
This meeting has been a long time coming, hasn't it?
Rightio, Daddy-o. Let's do it.
Fallout New Vegas. In the nearly 12 or 13, I really don't know. I've had a baby writing this, and time's really lost all meaning. It's 15 years since its release. There's been plenty already said about it. From the high praises to the shitpost, comparisons to other entries in the series, and even other games that Bethesda shits out, releases, a lot has truly been said. From its story, the charm in its characters, the world building, its wit, and maybe most importantly, the community keeping it alive today, it's been proven that the game left an impression on fans of the series and newcomers alike. Many of the videos that I've watched on New Vegas for research purposes go into great detail about the philosophy, the motives, and the politics of New Vegas, as well as the token mention that it's moddable like other Bethesda games. And sure, everybody talks about that stuff, but what about me? Why watch this video? I typed a bunch of letters here. Obsidian Entertainment was founded in 2003 by former Black Isle Studios developers Chris Avallone, Chris Parker, Chris Jones, Darren Monahan, and Fergus Urquhart after disappointment in losing the Dungeons & Dragons license and uncertainty in staying employed with the Black Isle owner Interplay. The team had been working on the cancelled Baldur's Gate 3, the Black Hound game, for over a year, and were frustrated with the loss of time and work. Urquhart, in his early 30s, much like I in my mid-years, worried that if he didn't start his own thing now, he would be too old to do so later. Investing their own money into the company, they began to look for a project to take on. After being rejected by Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, and Take-Two Interactive for games that never came to be, they were contacted by LucasArts, who requested that Obsidian make an action RPG set in the Star Wars universe. After presenting a concept for a first-person lightsaber hack and slash, they were again rejected. However, LucasArts president Simon Jeffrey instead asked them to make a sequel to the highly praised Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic game, as the team was familiar with the engine used in the first. Starting a woeful trend in short development deadlines for Obsidian, LucasArts originally gave them 15 months to develop what would become Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords. Development started in October of 2003 and was extended to a 2005 release date, only to be set back to the original holiday 2004 release. Because of the moved deadline, the game came out rough, suffering from crashes, cut content, and lack of polish. Even with all the bugs and the jumbled content, the game was met with a positive reception upon release, and if you're into Knights of the Old Republic at all, you know that the cut content and bugs were eventually fixed by the modders. During and after development of Knights of the Old Republic 2, the team expanded in order to handle more projects at once. After finishing the game, they moved on to create Neverwinter Nights 2 and its expansions, Mask of the Betrayer and Storm of Zahir. They were also requested by Disney to create a prequel to the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs titled simply Dwarfs. A year into development, Disney CEO Michael Eisner was replaced by Bob Iger, who shook up their corporate strategy and made Snow White untouchable again, resulting in the game being cancelled. After walking from the Disney deal, Obsidian then had talks with Electronic Arts to create an Elder Scrolls competitor, and then also Atari for another shot at a Baldur's Gate 3 before it was sold to Namco Bandai. Failing both of these, they ended up partnering with Sega, who wanted a role-playing game set in the Alien franchise. Again, after a period of time and resources wasted on the project, Sega decided to cancel. Though they canceled the work on whatever Alien game they had thought up, Sega did request that they create an original IP for them. This eventually turned into Alpha Protocol, the development of which could be a story in and of itself, but basically down to indecision on their part and Sega's. The development on that turned into a 4-year slog before finally releasing in June of 2010. Before Alpha Protocol could release, however, they were contacted by Bethesda Softworks, the new owners of the Fallout franchise, who had released the critically acclaimed Fallout 3 the year before. A deal was struck, and in April of 2009, it was announced that Obsidian would be making a sequel. The team was given a short 18 months to make and release what would become New Vegas. Though Obsidian reused the Gamebryo engine from Fallout 3, it still proved to be a difficult project. Despite the challenges and the learning curve coming from the at this point raggedy-ass old Gamebryo, they were still able to deliver and add some improvements, like iron sights for most of the guns, improved lighting and particles, and an actual compelling story. Unfortunately, the game on release scored an 84 on Metacritic, 1 point under their contracted requirement to receive a bonus. The reasoning, of course now famously, was down to bugs and performance issues. Rumors and bad-mouthing have spread online in the years following as a result of this, though it should be noted that Avalon and others have kept a professional attitude and remain thankful for the help from Bethesda to get such a massive game out in such a short amount of time. And no doubt, the game is massive indeed. At the time of its release, it took the record for having the highest amount of in-game dialogue for a single-player action RPG. Containing around 65,000 lines of dialogue, it absolutely dwarfed Fallout 3, the previous record holder, which clocked in at about 40,000 lines. The team would further develop 4 large expansions to the game: Dead Money, Honest Hearts, Old World Blues, and Lonesome Road. New Vegas released to generally good reviews, but was lambasted for the number of bugs, glitches, and crashes it experienced prior to patches and community fixes. To this day, discourse around the game online will constantly mention these issues, despite them being fixed and it being generally very stable these days, particularly with community patches. In the years since its release, however, though, the game has been critically acclaimed, especially for its storytelling, immersion, and the improvements it made on Fallout 3. Many going as far to deem it the best Fallout, and even before the new publicity the series as a whole has gained with the release of the Amazon Prime Fallout show, the game was considered by many to be among the best that the entire genre has to offer. I don't see what those have to do with each other in retrospect. All the hype surrounding it, though, has made for a strong community of players and modders who to this day still release new content for the game. Of course, a big selling point for Bethesda games is the modding potential. It's what keeps these games popular and player counts high for years after their release. The modders that keep them alive deserve as much recognition as the developers do for these games, and sometimes even more. Even after all these years after release, the modding community surrounding the game continues to work for free, and has had a lot of time to get very familiar with the tools they have for creating or improving content in these games. The mod libraries for New Vegas and every other Fallout and Elder Scrolls game are truly immense, to the point where they've bloomed into a vast, daunting sea of mods for newcomers to the games or to modding in general. Filled with everything from unofficial patches or restored content, new storylines and characters, to more in-depth things like more advanced scripting, complete overhauls of the game, Argonian sex simulators, lightning changes, just everything you can think of. But on top of all that goodness, there's a lot of jank. Things that just don't work. Things that make you ask, why the fuck am I installing this game for the 6th time tonight? Outdated mods, just broken stuff. Wading through Nexus mods to find the good stuff, let alone installing it all and making sure your game and textures load, can be a Herculean task. In my most recent playthroughs, though, I found a guide titled Viva New Vegas that I'll link in the description. It's a step-by-step walkthrough on finding and installing the most up-to-date mods for the game. As someone who's been playing and just modding the piss out of these games since Morrowind, I was shocked to see that a lot of the mods that I used in the past, and would just keep on using, if not for finding this, have been replaced with newer, better options that give the same, if not better results with less crashing. It's got a major focus on the stability and customization of it, though it does shy away from mods and retextures that aren't vanilla or are fairly performance intensive. So if you're looking for 8K textures or new animations, you'll still have to do your own research. I really can't recommend it enough if you're new to modding or like me have just been using the same old stuff for a long time. So today, we'll be looking at New Vegas through an updated modern lens that these mods can provide, going over some of the main story beats, making comparisons to vanilla where I can manage, and hopefully having a good enough time to hit the buttons below the video, or at least just fall asleep and let it play somewhere. Just, come on man, let it do it. I need this. Anyway, let's go ahead and begin. If you've played any Elder Scrolls or Fallout games in the last 20 years, you basically already know how New Vegas is going to feel to play. It's got a certain look and feel to the movement, gunplay, and graphics that feels immediately familiar. I'm looking at Starfield and expecting it's going to be the same. Oh my god, how long did it take me to actually do this? Even several generations of hardware later and being in a completely new franchise. Turns out I was right. The games themselves really just have a Bethesda feel to them, and I don't mean that all negatively. The gunplay is serviceable. It's not as tight as a true FPS like Counter-Strike or Apex or whatever the new flavor of the month Battle Royale shooter is now, but it feels good and I don't struggle with lining up my shots, even back in the day when I was playing this on an Xbox. The stats do play a large role in how combat feels, and at first most enemies will feel very bullet spongy, but as you level up your skills in a given weapon type like lasers or bullet, they will get more and more lethal and feel better to use. The enemies will start to drop easier, and if you're using laser or plasma-based guns, you'll see ashes or piles of goo left behind. It'll feel more like a shooter instead of the word-heavy RPG that it is, which is great for those moments between role-playing. To go off on a bit of a tangent, it is surprising how much of a step back Bethesda has taken in the role-playing of the franchise with each new release. In Fallout 4, you're very much a character. You exist with the choices already made for you. You know, you're looking for your son. You gotta find him. Nearly all the dialogue options in 4 boil down to you saying yes to anything asked of you, no, but yes, or a lore request here and there. Your character very much has a set-in-stone personality, and, as I said, even a kid you're looking for already. 76 is even worse. Considering you're supposed to be a fairly nondescript vault dweller, the options you're giving for dialogue or interacting with anyone might as well just be hitting next. Though to be fair, I'm pretty sure that it didn't even have non-enemy NPCs when it launched. Not so in New Vegas. After you take that dome shot, you're free to be whoever you want. Granted, you do start as a courier. I'd argue that a lot of us work jobs right now that we didn't necessarily pick. You can choose to be an asshole. You can tell people no. Not a mean or begrudging yes, but a firm no. You can decide if you don't even want the major factions to work with you, and you can wipe them out or ignore their entire plotline. It might not be revolutionary by any means, especially these days, but I want the option to say no. I want to be an asshole if I can, even though I never do it. Oh god, Boone, I'm so sorry. I know that the branching dialogues and alternate endings and all that stuff isn't what makes an RPG strictly speaking, but when I'm playing a Western RPG, it's to be expected really. It's what I want to see, and it's basically a pillar of the subgenre to me. There's just something to be said for how Bethesda games handle and feel to play. A huge part of that, I believe, is the way that the open world is presented. Now, I know open world games are a dime a dozen these days, but not many can compare to the presentation in Elder Scrolls and Fallout. NPCs have schedules, and even as basic as they are, it makes them feel so much more alive. It may not be the most immersive thing to barge into camp and wake Aurelius Phoenix to tell him you found an NCR dog tag, but my brain has an easier time believing that than someone standing in a corner their entire existence. It just feels more alive. It also feels more dead though, and not all in bad ways. Nearly every location you visit will have some sort of story to it. A lot of times this will be a literal story that you read by hacking into the various computers to read emails between management and the peons of the factory you're in. Or maybe notices about a corporate takeover that's happening prior to the bomb, or notes left behind by someone who had came to explore the ruins before you. A lot of these are pretty interesting and do paint an easy to imagine picture of what life would have been like before the bombs dropped. But if you look at the environments you explore, you'll see that it tells just as much of a story. A lone trailer on the outskirts of the city being used as a pirate radio station, containing broken radio equipment and graffiti warning us by sharing the inhabitants' last words. 2 skeletons laying together with one clasping a revolver in the bedroom of a bombed-out building makes us wonder whether it was the fear of the war or something even more sinister that made them check out early. More broadly, the world just makes sense. The highway you start in besides Goodsprings twists and turns, connects, and branches from road to road all the way to New Vegas. The large population of the area is supported by clean water, farms, and merchants that travel said road, going settlement to settlement. When you enter a bar, you'll see the bottles in front of each patron, food on the plates, bottles and empty glasses behind the bartender, and it's all interactable. If you jump up on the bar and start strutting down it like an asshole, you'll knock things off and over. Nobody may react realistically, if at all. The most, if anything, you'll get is a throwaway dialogue about something completely irrelevant, but it still somehow tricks my brain just enough to make it seem a little bit more believable. If you want to steal the whiskey in the back room, you pick it up and it disappears from the shelf, though that does give more of a reaction if you're caught. That all being said, there will be spoilers all the way throughout from here on, and they're not even in order, so here's your warning now. After the fantastic opening cinematic, we're greeted to a blinding light that fades into a dilapidated bedroom being watched by old Doc Mitchell. After being found in our shallow grave, we were brought to by him and had our gaping head wound patched up. After being told as much by him, we're handed the Reflectron to create our character. None of the mods I'm using for this video change the customization options we have for our face, but the default remains pretty flexible for the standards of its time. With the new textures, and more importantly, the lighting mods I've installed, the room looks pretty good as well. It's a stark difference between the vanilla, and in my opinion get the most bang for your buck on these improvements with the small indoor areas like this. The rest of character creation is streamlined in my playthrough to get you ready and out the door a bit faster. Instead of using the Vitomatic Vigor Tester to select our special skills, special meaning strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck, but you know what those mean, we're all gamers here, right? Right? Followed by taking the Doc's Rorschach test to assign tag skills and things like guns or lockpicking, and our traits, we're instead presented with a new UI that allows us to select everything at once. I definitely miss some of the charm of doing the Rorschach and the personality test, but it speeds up the character creation quite a bit, which is nice when you're making 4 separate characters for a retrospective like this. One good boon of the modded character creation is that instead of needing to use one of our trait points on the Wild Wasteland trait, that we can choose instead to opt into it at the end of character creation. For the unfamiliar, traits are special modifiers to our character that typically give bonuses in certain skills for drawbacks in others, and Wild Wasteland is a trait that changes or adds to the game's possible random encounters, many times having a humorous or referential spin to the content it adds or changes. I'm also using the Josh Sawyer Ultimate mod, which will block the giant cache of items that get added to your character at the beginning of the game, coming from the Gunrunners, Arsenal, and Courier Stash DLC, though it does get redistributed throughout the Wasteland, which is a nice bonus to the immersion in my opinion, as why the hell would our random backwater doctor here have all of that just available for us to take? I always thought it was an overwhelming amount of free loot to hand over immediately and isn't tied to any dialogue or gameplay. After finishing up our character, we're free to continue on. We can talk to Mitchell some more for an introduction to skill checks and dialogue, and to potentially score some stim packs, which are the Fallout version of healing potions, or some hard drugs, easy choice. There's also a broken gun to be found near the bed you woke up in that introduces skill checks outside of dialogue. Finally, you can score some additional gear from around the house without worry for turning the dock hostile or losing karma, which is New Vegas's mechanic for tracking how good or evil your character is perceived to other in the Mojave. Sadly, beyond giving you some titles, it doesn't seem much use besides one companion who will leave you if you're evil enough, as well as changing some of the dialogue during the ending slideshows. Speaking of mechanics and karma, the reputation system goes alongside it, but is tracked independently and is specific to different communities. Reputation can be broken down into 2 categories, fame and infamy. You'll gain fame typically by finishing quests or helping NPCs who request items or other things, and just generally by not playing like a dickhead. Infamy can be gained by being a dickhead, an ass, a real gamer. Things like stealing, killing, and certain dialogue options will give it as well. And again, these are faction specific. For instance, killing members of the Powder Gangers that wrap up the tutorial town of Good Springs will raise your fame with the settlers of Good Springs, but will make you more infamous amongst the Powder Gangers. One big caveat, at least for me, when it comes to the system is that once fame or infamy are gained, they are never removed, except for certain one-time triggers that can only affect certain factions. What this means is that for most playthroughs, just by nature of the way that I play the game, i.e. looting as I go for either unique items or just for survival, at least before you get to the strip and you can cheese your way to max chips in every casino, is that nearly every character will end up in the Wild Child category for most factions. Wild Child being the title that you receive when your fame and infamy reach the highest thresholds, and since you cannot remove either of them, you are stuck with that title once you hit it. That being said, it's not a huge issue, and because of your high fame, you won't miss out on any quests, and you still receive lots of positive reputation influences, but it does make it harder to see certain dialogues and scenarios that play out when you're not completely Paragon or Renegade Shepherd. Gameplay-wise, the effect is small, but when it comes to immersion, it limits the way you can play. If you want to play as a feared Legion slaver, you can, but unless you want the townsfolk you're subjugating to be like, he's just a crazy kid with a pure heart of gold over there, you really gotta pick and choose which content you go through. Ultimately, it's a tiny gripe, but it has been something that's always nagged at me when I see it in my Pip-Boy menus, and I haven't really seen much in the way of mods that changes how the system works. Though I'm sure there is something out there. Please comment if you know of anything, or comment if you don't. Just comment, please. Come on, just one. Outside of Doc Mitchell's house, we're greeted by the all-too-familiar blinding white light when we first enter the wasteland, and a few of other buildings around us. The Bethesda open world intro. Comparing it to openings like Morrowind, Skyrim, Fallout 3, and 4, it's okay. Goodsprings is a nice enough little post-war town, but it's not the most picturesque. The Doc's house and Goodsprings as a whole serve as a good tutorial for the gameplay and mechanics, and there's a little bit of everything available, and the stakes are low, but not entirely non-existent. The main drama of the town is that the previously mentioned powder gangers are hanging around just outside town looking for a merchant that fled from a raid they had set up. Through talking to the inhabitants and the merchant, you can choose to defend them by gathering supplies like armor and grenades from other townspeople, should you be able to convince them, or if you walk out to the gangers, you can hear their take on the situation and assist them if you'd rather. Both groups will become largely irrelevant shortly into the game, so the choice isn't hugely important besides for role-playing. All things considered, this is one of my favorite starts to any Fallout game. It's much better at letting me define my character in an immersive way when compared to, say, Fallout 3 and 4, when we were already set on a quest from that character's perspective that would be hard to ignore. Like, sure, you can roleplay that you don't give a shit about your father or your son respectively, but then that requires you to do that anytime you don't want to jump right into the main quests. Now, with New Vegas, your job as a courier is already established, but then freaking Chandler Bing shoots you in the head. And who's to say you'll even want to track Benny down? After all, he very nearly just killed you. You could decide you're going to want to lay low and avoid them finishing the job, or that after your near-death experience you decide to shack up with the NCR for a new purpose or safety in numbers, or that this is the final straw in your legitimate dealings in the wasteland and you join Caesar to crush it. After you walk out of the Doc's house, what you do for the rest of your playthrough is yours to decide. Without any, here it comes, are you ready? Ludonarrative dissonance from needing you to forget about your dad after you entrusted the future of your people to you, or to track down your son that you've very clearly shown to care about. It's a great tutorial area and sets the scene for the true role-playing way better than any of the modern Fallout games. Already here we can really see some of the effects of our modding. The textures are crisp as a box of Dandy Boy apples, and as I mentioned earlier, the lighting, especially in interiors, is much better in my opinion. With my selected character overhauls, some look a little off, like Easy Pete for instance shares a striking resemblance with a piece of abnormally dry beef jerky, but Sunny Smiles stands out as a marked improvement. I much prefer these looks compared to over-enhancing everything to 4K, as it ends up looking very unnatural with the way animations, pathing, idling, and really just everything in the game operates. It's almost an Uncanny Valley vibe when you go too far on the upscales, but the Viva New Vegas mod guide does great with selections that look much better without tipping into that. Before leaving Goodsprings for this playthrough, I also find enemies from one of my other installed mods. It's not included in the guide, and I'm sure it has plenty of people who don't like it, but it's always fun for me to mix it up after so many playthroughs in these games. It's the Monster mod, baby! There is some variation of a mod like this in most Bethesda games I've found, and I don't know why, but damn do I love the half-baked enemies they add. I know it definitely contrasts with my immersion rant earlier, especially considering a lot of these mods usually include enemies from other games, but my headcanon for basically all Fallout and Elder Scrolls games is that radiation/magic be crazy, so who knows what you might see. Alright, so I know I really rambled off there for a while about Goodsprings, but it was for good reason. I think it does an excellent job setting up, well, the setting for New Vegas, explaining the mechanics and acting as a foundation for the rest of the gameplay. The caveat being that besides different locales and stories you'll see, that foundation really isn't built on too much. The quests get longer, but not much more involved. I can't knock the game too much for that, as it's pretty much how all modern Fallout and Elder Scrolls games are made. Wide as an ocean, deep as a puddle. We all know this. If you do a thorough playthrough of Goodsprings and did not enjoy yourself, you'll likely not change your mind as you progress further. Now, that's not to say that I dislike the game. I mean, I've played it several times just for this video, and many times before. I just think it really encapsulates the feeling of the rest of the game into an easily digestible tutorial that doesn't feel like a tutorial. From Goodsprings, we're tasked with tracking down our attackers, and we're going to need to go through several towns in order to do so. This set of quests is largely skippable if you'd like, as if you already know where Benny has gone through past runs, or you're able to guess it somehow, you can proceed directly there and confront him without needing to do the whole myriad tasks of following his steps, tracking down leads, and instead take a direct route there. And I do mean direct. You could head north out of town, and if you manage to kill or avoid the high-level enemies between you and New Vegas, it's nearly a straight shot. Those enemies, though, are quite formidable, and without previous knowledge of the tools available to you, it's quite difficult to run or sneak past them. You've got your Cazadors, mutated wasp things created by man, not Fallout, that will chase you down very quickly and can badly poison you, if they don't outright one-shot you. You've got your giant scorpions, walking takes that can soak up a lot of damage, especially if lower power weapons is available to you at the start of the game, who will chase you down very quickly and badly poison you if they don't outright one-shot you. And finally you got your Deathclaws. Giant engineered abomination lizards that look like Diablo. No, not that one. That can chase you down very quickly and will one-shot you. If you can manage it though, you're plopped just outside of New Vegas and can either pay, quest your way in, or if you're cutting it off you can find some NCR armor and use their working monorail to enter the city. Just be careful not to talk to NCR members while you're wearing it, as they won't be happy to find you impersonating one of them. That goes for any other faction armor you find. Wearing it will disguise you as a member of that faction to both friend and foe, but it is easily seen through by talking to someone in said faction. It's nice for going through wider areas patrolled by one or the other, but not game-breakingly so. The game instead pushes us first south, then east, before rounding back up north towards New Vegas itself. Something awesome about this is that you're able to see the city looming in the distance for much of the journey. A constant reminder of your goal, and at least at night a literal shining beacon for you. This will first take you through Prim, a small pre-war resort town that has been taken over by the Powder Gangers. Even if we help the Powder Gangers in Goodsprings and are friends with them, it's explained that these are rogue, evil gangers that won't listen to reason. Kind of a bummer that there isn't an option for siding with them here, but still not majorly disappointing. They're a band of prisoners who broke out of the nearby prison, and I can justify in my head that some of them may have broken off from the main group. After helping out the citizens of Prim by ousting the gangsters and selecting a new sheriff, and maybe picking up a new companion, we're headed directly southeast towards Nipton. Approaching Nipton, we find the town set ablaze by the Legion, burned for its reputation as a town for the Town. It's our first run-in with the Legion. Rather than killing us too, we're allowed to leave to spread word of what the Legion has done here. An NPC will tell us how lucky it was when we first approach. Apparently, the Legion used a lottery to determine who would live and die, and he was the lucky jackpot winner. Inside the town, we see several crucified powder gangers, and near the town square, the Legion is gathered. After talking to the leader of the group, Volpes and Colta, we can proceed further down the road. A nice little detail with Volpes, though, is that if we choose to fight here and kill him, he is replaced with a different Legion frumentary, or spy. At a later time, we would normally meet him in New Vegas. Likewise, if we skip Nipton and instead meet Volpes somewhere else for the first time, upon returning here, he will be replaced with yet another frumentary, which I never noticed until one of these most recent playthroughs. It's another little detail that gives a sense of the quests in New Vegas being open to how you approach and complete them. After deciding how to proceed, our next target is the town of Novak, where we can find an NCR soldier, Manny, who knows where Benny and his gang have gone next. He'll want you to do one of the, in my opinion, best side quests in the game for this information, but you have the option of hacking his computer or seducing him into telling you where to go. The quest, however, involves you going just out of town to a rocket test site that is crawling with feral ghouls who Manny wants you to clear out. But it turns out that inside the facility there are non-hostile ghouls led by a glowing ghoul named Jason Bright, a cult-like leader who's convinced his followers that they can use the facility's rockets to escape to their promised land. There are several ways to tackle the quest here. You can kill them all like Manny wants, or if you choose, you can instead ally with this ghoul and help them repair the rocket to send them all to, I don't know, the moon or wherever they want. You can even be a complete asshole and after helping them get the rocket ready, choose to sabotage it at the last moment to kill them all in an even more spectacular way. Either way, after dealing with the ghouls, Manny informs us that our next stop is Boulder City, as the cons that were helping Benny to track us down are held up there. The Great Khans are a raider tribe technically, but they are the only organized bunch in the wasteland, if only just. They actually first appeared in the original Fallout and have their own quest lines you'll run into later in the game. Currently, they hold a major grudge against the NCR because of a major oopsie with a war crime. Upon reaching Boulder City, we find that the cons are completely surrounded by the NCR. Boulder ain't much by the time we discover it, as it's been mostly leveled from battles that take place before the game starts. Indeed, the only actual resident left is a bartender named Ike. The city does house a concrete mixing works, but due to the death clause we discussed earlier, it's not in operation during the game. The cons we're looking for are held up in a small cell separate from the outside world. Cell in this instance meaning an area that the game loads independently from the main open world. We're given a few standard options for dealing with them, namely wiping them out on behalf of the NCR, wiping out the NCR stationed here for the cons, or by a speech check we can come to a peaceful conclusion. Either way, we find from the cons or from their loot that Benny has moved on to New Vegas itself. Before we reach the city itself, we're again given a few options on how to do it. New Vegas requires a pass or credit check to enter. If we have over 2,000 caps on us, we can enter, but we will need to do this credit check each time we come. The money's not actually taken from you, but if your funds dip below it, you're not allowed back in until you save some up. We can also get a pass a few different ways. There's a gate called the Kings located in Freeside, bordering the wall to enter New Vegas. The Kings are a group of Elvis Presley impersonators that banded together before the events of the game after being ousted from New Vegas itself and finding shelter in a nearby Elvis museum. They control the settlement of Freeside and provide protection to those living there. Despite running a protection racket and control of the resources, they are mostly liked and respected by the residents of the town. If we complete their tasks, one of the possible rewards at the end is a New Vegas pass. Otherwise, we can either purchase a pass if we can find out where and convince the holder to do so, or hack one of the robots, or Securitrons rather, that are guarding the gate, though this requires a particularly difficult skill check to do so. After finding a way, we enter directly onto the Strip. New Vegas was largely spared destruction due to most of the warheads that were sent for it being intercepted by Mr. House, a pre-war rich boy who basically ran the city. New Vegas itself is sadly pretty underwhelming, even for the time. There are only a handful of casinos and not many NPCs doing much of anything outside. You will see some drunken NCR soldiers and random citizens without dialogue, but it's largely empty. Beyond that, the entire strip isn't even accessible without having to traverse 3 separate loading gates, implemented in the game due to hardware limitations for the consoles of the time. Both of these luckily can be partially mitigated with mods for the modern gamer. You can add some life with additional NPCs and scripted activities, and remove some of the excess loading screens in the area, but it'll never feel lively like you'd expect a nearly untouched post-apocalyptic Sodom and Gomorrah in the wasteland to be. The first time we enter, we're greeted by one of the Securitrons guarding the place, who has temporarily been taken over by the personality that saved us from our early grave, Victor. He instructs us to enter the Lucky 38 Casino, that same tower we've been seeing in the distance our entire journey here, to meet his boss, Mr. House. We can do that or confront Benny first to start the escalation into the main struggle of the game, who will control New Vegas. If we choose to visit House, he will instead direct us to Benny anyway. There are a few different ways to handle Benny. He's currently hiding out in one of the casinos, the Tops. Because we are searched when entering the casinos, we can't go in completely guns blazing, but there are ways to either acquire weapons once we enter, including our own, or a small subset of weapons are tagged as holdout weapons, basically meaning weapons that you can choose to keep on your person when entering these areas as they're easily concealed. Once we're in there are multiple ways of deciding how to proceed. You could pass a speech check to get access to his room, confront him directly, or if you have the right perks, even seduce him into giving you what you need. After choosing a weapon, we can confront Benny either by talking or starting a shootout in the middle of the tops. If we talk with him, he'll hook us up with a presidential suite and inform us that he'll come to talk to us in there so that we can avoid any of the normies hanging around hearing us. Unless we can pass a high speech check here, he'll betray us and send goons to take care of us while he flees away further into Legion territory. A key note here is that Benny himself is not part of the Legion, and the Legion doesn't typically take well to sharp-dressed, slick-talking city folk sneaking through their territory. We'll have to find him captured in the Legion's main encampment later if we choose this route. Ultimately, he holds the Platinum Ship, the main storyline's MacGuffin that is needed to determine who will rule. However we decide to handle Benny, once we leave the casino, we'll be greeted by two NPCs, Volpes and Colta, who we met earlier, or his replacement Illyrio if we ended up killing him, and a soldier with the NCR. They both have basically the same message for us. We've been pardoned by the Legion and the NCR for any crimes we've committed before this point, and the leaders from both factions wish to meet with us. We can proceed directly to them and start questing to become aligned with them, or we may visit Mr. House, the original owner of the trip, or a new robot who has a route for us to complete the game should we decide to piss everybody off beyond repair or strike out on our own. This point in the game is a perfect jumping off point to start delving into the vaults, side quests, companions, all that juicy stuff, but we'll get that to another time as I want to discuss the larger story beats first. The central conflict of New Vegas revolves around the push for the control of the Mojave and thus the Hoover Dam and the valuable power it generates. The New California Republic, or NCR, is a post-war federation formed by denizens of a pre-war shelter, Vault 15. Anyone familiar with the Fallout series knows about the vaults, and I'll be sure to touch on them more later. To be honest though, I've never been very intrigued by the NCR, as it largely serves as a redo of the United States, just based on the West Coast, which isn't what I'm looking for in my post-apocalyptic RPGs, or actual life. There are interesting quests for sure. Deciding the fate of Helios 1, the monorail, and Kimball's Hoover Dam visit stand out as awesome ones, no matter which side of them you're playing for. And that's part of what it takes away for the NCR for me personally. I'm not locked out of any of this content by not playing for them, which is great, but the standard rank-and-file army missions don't leave much for me to desire. The one that particularly offends me is the Ranger Station radio quests, which have you going back and forth across the entirety of the map to verify radio codes in an attempt to track down an informant to Caesar and the NCR. It sounds great on paper, but what happens nearly every time is I spend a half hour fast traveling to one area, walking to the station, having the same conversation over and over until it's done, with usually nothing but random mobs and the monster mods sprinkled in for any distraction or challenge. I don't mean to discredit the NCR as a whole, as many of the quests from the NCR citizens are enjoyable to me, but when it drifts into the army roleplay, it's tougher for me to stay engaged. The next major faction in the fight for the Mojave is Caesar, or Caesar, leader of the aptly named Caesar's Legion. The Legion is primarily a military force led solely by Caesar as its self-appointed dictator, and while they do capture and hold territories, they exist in the game primarily as slavers. Looking at the lore given to us by other characters though, it is told that the Legion-controlled territories are generally stable, safer to travel through, and even more profitable for traders to deal with. The reason for all this being the brutality that the Legion brings to those who oppose it. Tribes conquered by the Legion are stripped of their history and individuality and either become newer waves of slave soldiers or die. This includes different raider bands who, thanks to their typical chem addictions and trade in illicit substances, are all but entirely driven out of Legion-controlled territory. As I'm sure you've guessed by the name, they heavily emulate the Roman Empire wherever they can. From the names of their ranks, their leader naming themselves Caesar, they even end up having a gladiator arena in their camp. That being said, they are slavers, technophobes, treat women as property, and kill indiscriminately. Comparatively, they are much less morally gray than the other options for finishing the game, but if you're looking for a believably evil faction, they're one of the best in this era of gaming. The third, or maybe fourth option depending on your choices for controlling the Mojave's future, is total independence. As the NCR and Caesar's legions battle each other for control of the territory, the city, or rather the main strip of Vegas, remains self-governed. At the start of the game, it's controlled by Robert House, a pre-war businessman who avoided destruction not only for himself but for Vegas during the Great War by use of anti-ballistic systems in the city, then inserting himself into a self-contained life support chamber that greatly, perhaps even indefinitely, extended his lifespan. Albeit it requires him to remain in this chamber forever. From his home/tomb, the Lucky 38 Casino, House aspires to keep the strip neutral and open to anyone who wants to spend their money there. He holds no love for the NCR, considering them relics of the past, and has outright disdain for Legion and slavery. At home on the strip, he lets the tribes, who are now referred to as the families, an allusion to real-life mafia families he put in charge of the casinos there, operate independently. For his true intentions lay in reactivation of the full abilities of his Securitron army with the chip that got us shot in the head to start with. Man, what a fucking run-on sentence that was. I love Mr. House. His madman-type attitude and mannerisms shine through, even though 99% of your interactions with him are just his face on a screen. I find it hard not to root for an independent Vegas. They never requested annexation by the NCR, and with the Legion being flat-out evil, I think for the people there it's the best option. However, as far as independence goes, Mr. House is not the only option for Vegas. After confronting Benny over our attempted murder, the player can discover hidden away in his suite a rogue Securitron, referred to as the Yes Man. Oh man, that's an old joke. I should have stopped that. Yes Man was a typical Securitron that was damaged and subsequently repaired and reprogrammed for Benny's use. Hence his reason for the betrayal of House and trying to kill us. With Benny out of the picture, the Yes Man will take orders from us, though due to the limitations of time and who knows what else, the quest chain under Yes Man is largely the same as Mr. House. What this does wonderfully, though, is prevent you from ever truly being locked out of completing the game. No matter what factions you piss off or who you kill, the player can always finish the game by locating Yes Man and finishing the main quest under them. There is no threat of prophecy to sever or weave of fate you have to reload to restore. Even Yes Man himself can be killed. All that ends up happening is that he's replaced by another Securitron, the same way Victor, the robot who dug us out of an early grave, is if he is destroyed. It's hard for me to complete the game under House with Yes Man as an option, though both outcomes result in a Vegas free from NCR or Legion control. It's only under Yes Man and the Courier that it truly becomes independent. No technologically immortal gods, no old world masters. No matter which faction we choose to ally with, the story beats remain nearly the same. The NCR will have us dealing with the free side gang, the Kings, have us running counter-ops on Legion, which includes disarming a bomb on a monorail, enhanced interrogation of a Legion operative, and preventing the assassination of their president, Aaron Kimball, while he gives a motivational speech to troops stationed at the Hoover Dam. The assassination mission is nicely detailed, as there are multiple pieces of evidence that something is going to go down, and multiple attempts that will go on in real time once the president's speech has started. The Legion, conversely, will have us dealing with families on the strip, planting a bomb on the same monorail we Legion's got me acting up, or playing the role of the assassin during Kimball's Hoover Dam speech. We can also choose to help rid Caesar of cancer, or take him out and help instill a new leader in the Legion. The House and Independent paths have many of the same beats, but with some of the faction-specific stuff removed. Unfortunately, they do feel less fleshed out than the NCR and Legion, but are still largely satisfying, especially given that I left out a large chunk of quests that all the paths share. Namely, dealing with the long ago mentioned cons, the Brotherhood of Steel faction hold up in the Mojave, and either securing help from or eliminating a group called the Boomers who occupy the nearby Nellis Air Force Base and even potentially have access to a pre-war bomber. Beyond these main story quests are many side quests that can be completed largely independent of the main story, but serve to flesh out the main factions much more. Most of the larger, multi-stage quests will have a big impact on the resolutions we're giving in the endgame slideshow. After completing our quests for whatever faction we've chose to ally ourselves with, we are able to start the final battle for the Hoover Dam. The quests play out identical, just swapping whatever enemies you fight for whatever factions you didn't pick. It does serve as a nice send-off for the game, especially if you're into the gunplay. It's fast-paced, and depending on the side quest you've completed, you'll see the smaller third-party factions show up to assist. After making our way through the hordes, we're free to either enter the Legate's camp to face Legate Lanius as our final boss if we've allied with the NCR, or alternatively, if we've sided with the Legion, we'll push through to confront General Oliver of the NCR. Finally, if we've instead chosen an independent New Vegas, we'll have the option of using the Platinum chip to upgrade the Securitron army if we're taking control of it for ourselves, or completing it as House intended to keep his rule going forevermore. Well, that's New Vegas in summary. I think it goes without saying that this is one of my favorite RPGs, not only in the Fallout series, but in all of gaming. It expanded on what Bethesda did well in Fallout 3, and brought back a lot of the intrigue, silliness, and dread from Fallout 1 and 2. Is it perfect? Not by any means, but to this day I find it to be one of the strongest entries in the 3D half of the series. The world feels lived in, the stakes are much higher than just what relates to the player, and there's just so much to do. Me personally, the game became the mold for what I want to see in Western open-world RPGs. The way there can be so many permutations in the way the ending slides play out, the interactivity between the player and the world, the permanence of the things you do, a lot of it started out here for me. It's a shame to me that the development, team, and what went into making it was such a one-off, lightning in a bottle of occurrence that it's not something I think Obsidian did or could do again. They really hit the nail on the head in a lot of ways making New Vegas, and if you're somehow this far into the video and haven't played it, you really owe it to yourself. The game frequently goes on sale on Steam, and I'm pretty sure when I picked it up again to make this video, it was like $5 for the game and all the DLC included. It ain't perfect, but this remains just about the pinnacle of the genre for me. So we've briefly discussed the story of New Vegas, met the factions that are vying for control of the Mojave. What's next? Well, that's it. I put a lot of time into writing the script for myself, telling myself that I'm dumb and nobody cares about my ramblings, learning to poorly edit video, and playing the game 5 or 6 times over, so I'm gonna have to call it. In retrospect, I think I made an awful choice for a first-timer entering the video essay sphere of YouTube. New Vegas is a massive undertaking to play, and I quickly learned that just because I've done it several times over, that doesn't make summarizing what happened, how I feel about it, and making it at least hopefully somewhat entertaining easy by any means. It's truly a massive game, and if I wasn't as stubborn as I was, I probably would have shelved this idea a long time ago and maybe went with something more linear. That being said, this may be the first in a series on New Vegas. If there's a next, I'd like to deep dive into the side quests and companions, but first I'm going to have to see how Season 2 of the show came out. Thanks for watching this far, and so long.